All right, so if you are having issues keeping your spine erect, straight up, Fitness Family Podchaser here with BKPT. It was International Leg Day today. Did some legs today, and I saw some questions pop up and arise, and wanted to knock these out for everybody, because obviously this is not just an issue with the clients I'm working with, and I want to make sure that, obviously people out there are going through a fitness journey, and they want to make sure they're doing things properly, because the last thing you want to do is worry about your hips, knees, spine, neck, and I want to go over all the different things that I talk with my clients about, right? Unfortunately, there's a lot of career injuries or ailments or imbalances that are created. And when I say that, I'm not talking about just football players, I'm not talking about like major athletes. I'm talking about normal people that have to either A, drive for sales calls, sales type stuff, and they're kind of like, out and about, and they're stuck in cars for a long period of time. Or if they're at a desk just crushing work, that's kind of where they're at. That's what they do is, crushing work. And what happens is you get really tight hip flexors, very poor posture, internally rotated shoulders, and there's a number of things that happen, right? Especially the longer that you have to work that type of, job, career. So I'm going to go through some tips today, right now with you, so that way, you can see what you're doing right, see what you're doing wrong. Also, the things that I work with my clients on is, hey, you know what? Don't overwhelm yourself. So you don't want to sit there and say, oh my God, there's like 50 things I got to go run through in my brain to make sure that I'm doing squats properly. So yes, there's always going to be a lot. There's always room for improvement, right? So I'm going to go through these one by one, and I'm going to put them in order for you, so that way you got the most important, meaning either the highest risk, so that way you're doing them properly, to not the least important, but just kind of in order. So as long as you're doing number one right, kind of move on to number two. So at least you're going to go ahead and take the first one on your scale, wherever that's at, and work on that one. So you want to work on that one, and then once you get that one down, then move to the next one, okay? So let's go ahead and run through these real quick. All right, so if you are having issues keeping your spine erect, straight up, and not from like hinging forward because your hip flexors are so tight and you're in this position, couple good things to do is you might not want to back squat for a little while. Start off with either doing front squats, crisscross grip, or goblet squats. So hold goblet squat and keeping things in front of you, because this is going to help you to keep that position right out the rip anyways, to keeping more of an upright position. So holding that, dumbbell, kettlebell in front of you and just driving straight up. That way you can get a good goblet squat in. Or doing a split squat, which is, one of those things to help open those hip flexors up also. So having your foot up onto or a bench, for that matter, where you can get a good split squat in, where it's like this, and your head's upright also, just dropping that back leg straight to the ground, driving up through the heel, but trying to really, relax that back leg, get a good stretch in the hip flexor, and help to build that erect position before going into it. Other things that you could probably do is either A, take a wider stance. You always want to reassess and get back into your normal, shoulder width, feet forward, squatting stance. Just like sampling food, right? You want to, every now and then you got to recheck your palate, make sure that, hey, I hate sweet potatoes now, I love it, but I got to keep trying things until, say, hey, work it back in my meal plan. So taking a wider stance sometimes, that way it'll help you to keep your head up, back straight, and then as you kind of build into that, and narrowing it up. So getting a good kind of measuring tool to make sure that you got a distance, but your head's up, back straight. Another thing, same things, sometimes pointing those toes out, so getting more of a little bit of a plie. Those are a couple good factors. Or else also starting off with like a 2.5 pound plate or a 5 pound plate and putting it, upside down or flat on the ground, so that way you can put your heels up on it. So that way you're able to drive through your heels, but sometimes it helps to help you sit more upright as well. So same thing, like work it thinner. So if you start with a 5, then go to the 2.5, and to nothing. Okay, so those are all huge factors to help keep your body and your posture to that right position. Number 1, and the reason I feel like this is number 1, because if this is done improperly, it's going to mess everything up anyway. So it doesn't matter. Number 1 is definitely making sure that you're squared up on the bar. So a lot of times people will look at this pad, or they'll have a pad on there or not have a pad on there, with either way. And 1, they're not lined up properly. So don't worry about the pad per se. Obviously, like wherever it's at. So even if it's off-centered, if you grab the bar in the same spot, so a lot of times they'll have this little like rough stuff on it. So you want to put your pinkies on that or hands on the edge of the rough stuff. So as long as you're centered with your grip, it's going to most likely keep you centered moving into your positioning underneath the bar. Okay, so that is definitely number 1. So you want to be centered, because if you pick weight up and it's off centered on your spine, then obviously the whole time you're squatting, you're going to be fighting and causing more problems than good. And if you do pick it up and you realize you're off balance, then guess what? Rack it. Don't go through the motions. Don't squat. Go ahead and rack it. Okay? Start back over. Go back to this first tip. Okay? With the squats, also going through all these different tips for you. We went through first the positioning of the bar. Now we're moving on to actually the pick up of it. So we're centered. You're picking the bar up. Biggest thing I talk to people about is pick it up and adjust. So now your body's used to it. Okay? So you're not walking back, causing instability right out the gate. So you don't want to pick it up and start walking back. So pick it up, get used to the bar, walk it back, get to a spot where you're going to do your squats, and then that way when you perform them, you're going to be right there in that perfect position. Same thing once you get to that spot where you're going to do your squats. If you're doing box squats, you want to make sure that you are, stable in that position for a second before you start your squat motion. Okay? So those are key tips. When you're done, finish the same way you started. So stand up tall, adjust the weight, walk forward, and you want to walk the bar right off your shoulders. Okay? You don't want to lean in and just put the bar on the rack, because the worst case scenario, you miss the hook, like you just about saw me do. You want to make sure it's boom, you hit it, and the bar comes off of your shoulders. Okay? Because if you miss that bar, guess what's going down? Your whole body, the spike, everything. You do some. There's so many of these. I just have to keep going. I'm so sorry. I want you guys to understand that some of these should be number 1. Some should be number 2. It doesn't matter. Like, you find the interest where you feel like this is important to you. But most of these things are quick fixes, right? So setting up your safety rack. So people will ask me, Brent, how do you squat heavy by yourself? Because that's it's a big concern, right? So 1, you have to understand, you have to know that failing is okay, but you want to have the safety measures set up to fail. So, setting up your safety bars at a height where you're not going to face plant all the way to the ground, so you don't want them all the way down here, so there's a lot of, oh crap, the whole way down until it hits those things. So setting them up to the point where it's high enough where you hit the squat, but see how it's not close enough where it's going to like bump it and knock me off kilter, right? So making sure you have it at a high enough point where you're not like, oh crap, and it's bumping it and knocking you off centered, especially if you're maxing out anyways, because, any little bit's it's not good. It's just not good. So setting those up and then, honestly trying it, fail a couple times. Sometimes just getting that out of your mind where it's like, I don't want to push the limits because if I fail, I'm screwed, Like, try it, not with the heaviest weight you've ever done in your whole life prior to getting to that point. So that way, when you do get to that point, hey, you know what? I'm not scared. I'm going to go for it. And if I fail, guess what? No big deal. And take it off, and I take all the weight off, unrack it, and then put the bar back up and go again. So having those safety bars up is number 1, I think. So, but anyways, it's number 6 or 7. So, all right. Hopefully, you guys have loved these squat tips, tricks, things to think about when you're squatting. Because I want to make sure that you guys have success, and I want you to understand that You can do this alone. You can do it when you have, other people there helping spotting you, those types of things. But it's cool to sit there and tell somebody when you're spotting them too, like making sure that they're running through those fundamental things too, help reiterate some of these points. So that way, you're a great spotter and you're also taking care of yourself also. Number 4, I love box squats. Why? Because A, it gives you a target, okay? So it gives you a target. You want to make sure that you find a box that is going to be at a good height, so where you're going to be hitting, that 90-degree bend in your legs. So you want to make sure you're finding something along the lines, whether it's a stool, chair, bench, whatever it is, but kind of get a good judgment of where it's at, okay? And you can do this in a couple different ways. Like once you find that height, a lot of times people like it squared up behind them. It doesn't matter. The way it'll help you to keep your head up, back straight, and then as you kind of build into that and narrowing. As soon as you get down to that point, you want to hit your hamstring and right back up, because you don't want to relax. Once you relax on that box, you can sit back and you can rock forward. You're going to cause a lot of issues with your knees, just with that instability of just kind of like pushing forward, and you're going to be on your toes as you come up. And then also the compression of your spine on the box itself. So when you sit, if you relax, a lot of times you can relax all these muscles that are super tight to keep you, upright in that upright position. So that way, obviously you want to make sure that those do stay tight, because you're squatting. It's a big exercise. You typically will have a lot of weight on there, and you want to make sure that your body is secure and ready for it. All right. Number 5 tip. So big thing. I yell at people all day long, every day. I hope everyone hears this ringing through their head when they're squatting. So, and I do this with deadlifts also. I want to make sure your head is looking up. So get a focal point up nice and high. So that way, what happens is if you get up underneath this bar, we're picking it up, getting squared up, and you want to make sure your head's nice and high. Because if your head's high, your spine's high, right? If you look down, right away, you start seeing your spine start to go forward. So make sure your head's nice and high, looking up, pat, and just driving straight up through your heels. Same thing, don't look down, because that's what happens. You see that whole posture change from back there? You want to make sure that head's up high. So eyes high, eyes in the sky. So just get a good focal point up there and just keep thinking that in your mind as you're squatting, okay? Value in this, you need to share this, okay? Because sharing this will change the health and well-being of the world.